Gather around the campfire, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Nordic Nights. Tonight, I have 4 witness stories for you, so settle down, let the fire warm you, and prepare to be captivated as we journey into the unknown, mysterious, and extraordinary. Soil sampling. It was a chilly winter evening in the small village of Jokkmokk, nestled deep in the Swedish Lapland. Mikael, an avid outdoorsman, had decided to take a late-night walk through the snow-covered forest to clear his mind. The sky was crystal clear, and the stars shone brightly, reflecting off the pristine snow. The air was crisp, and Mikael could see his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. After about an hour of walking, Mikael reached a secluded clearing he often visited. It was one of his favorite spots, surrounded by tall pine trees and offering a breathtaking view of the night sky. He sat down on a fallen tree, taking in the serene beauty of the winter landscape. Suddenly, a strange light caught his attention. At first, he thought it was the northern lights, but the light grew brighter and seemed to be moving in a deliberate manner. As he watched, the light descended slowly towards the clearing, and to his astonishment, it took on a distinct shape, a diamond-shaped craft, unlike anything he had ever seen. The craft was about 10 meters tall and hovered silently above the ground, emitting a soft hum. Its surface was metallic and smooth, reflecting the moonlight in an almost ethereal way. The craft's edges glowed with a bluish light, and intricate patterns of lights flickered along its sides. Mikael's heart raced as he watched the craft lower a series of thin metallic rods towards the ground. The rods moved with precision, as if they were scanning the area. Mikael could see that each rod emitted a faint light, which illuminated patches of snow and ground as they moved. It was clear that the craft was conducting some sort of examination or sampling of the soil. Despite his initial fear, Mikael felt a strange sense of curiosity and awe. He crept closer, hiding behind a tree to get a better view. From his vantage point, he could see the rods moving systematically across the clearing, occasionally pausing as if collecting data. The craft seemed to be taking samples of the soil, snow, and even the vegetation. Mikael watched in silence, mesmerized by the precision and sophistication of the craft's movements. After what felt like an eternity, the rods retracted back into the craft, and the diamond-shaped object began to ascend slowly. As it rose, the blue lights along its edges intensified, casting an eerie glow over the clearing. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, the craft shot upwards into the sky and disappeared from view, leaving Mikael standing alone in the silent forest. For several minutes, Mikael remained rooted to the spot, trying to process what he had just witnessed. He felt a mixture of exhilaration and disbelief. He knew he had to share his experience, even though he was certain many would be skeptical. When he finally returned home, he immediately wrote down every detail, determined to document the extraordinary encounter. Whenever I talk to Mikael about that night, he emphasizes the surreal nature of the experience. It wasn't just an encounter with an unknown craft, it felt like a glimpse into a world far beyond our understanding. The Baltic Sea USO. It was the summer of 2018, and I was on a sailing trip with a few close friends. We had set out from Stockholm, Sweden, with plans to sail around the Baltic Sea, exploring the beautiful archipelagos and enjoying the tranquility of the open water. Our boat, a sturdy vessel named Madame Blow, was well equipped for the journey. The weather had been perfect for sailing, with clear skies and calm seas. One evening, as the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, we found ourselves near the island of Gotland. We decided to anchor for the night in a secluded bay. The water was eerily still, and the only sounds were the gentle lapping of the waves against the hull and the distant calls of seabirds. After dinner, we gathered on deck, enjoying the cool evening breeze and sharing stories under the stars. The atmosphere was peaceful, and we felt a deep connection with nature. As the night grew darker, we noticed something unusual. The water around our boat began to glow with a faint blue light. At first, we thought it was bioluminescent plankton, but this light was different, more intense and pulsating. Curiosity got the better of us, and we leaned over the edge of the boat to get a closer look. To our astonishment, we saw a large circular object rising slowly from the depths. The object was about 10 meters in diameter and emitted a bright blue light that illuminated the surrounding water. It was unlike anything we had ever seen before, and we could hardly believe our eyes. The object hovered just below the surface, making no noise and creating no waves. It seemed to be observing us, and we felt an overwhelming sense of awe and unease. As we watched in stunned silence, the object began to move, gliding effortlessly through the water. It circled our boat several times, its light casting eerie shadows on the deck. We were all transfixed by the sight, unable to take our eyes off the mysterious object. One of my friends, a marine biologist, tried to take pictures, but the light was so intense that it overwhelmed the camera's sensor. We could only watch as the object continued its silent dance around our boat. After what felt like an eternity, the object suddenly shot upwards, breaking the surface with a gentle splash. It hovered above the water for a moment, its blue light now blending with the stars. Then, with a burst of speed, it shot off into the night sky, disappearing from view in a matter of seconds. We were left in stunned silence, our minds racing to comprehend what we had just witnessed. The peaceful bay returned to its normal state, as if nothing had happened. We spent the rest of the night discussing the encounter, each of us trying to make sense of the unexplainable. The next morning, we searched the area for any signs of the object, but there was nothing. The water was clear, and the bay was as serene as ever. We continued our journey, but the memory of that night stayed with us, a constant reminder of the mysteries that lie beneath the surface. Whenever I share this story, I'm met with a mix of skepticism and wonder. People often ask if it was a dream or a trick of the light, but I know what we saw was real. It was an encounter that changed our perception of the world and our place in it. The Yemsa light phenomenon. I should have shared this experience a long time ago, but for some reason, I am only doing it now. Perhaps my hesitation was due to the uncertainty surrounding that night. I didn't know what I had witnessed. Over time, I nearly forgot about the whole event until the photos occasionally reminded me. So I decided to share this sighting to add an interesting chapter to everyone's life story. The sequence of events was as follows. I was spending a traditional weekend outdoors in Yemsa, specifically Yemsonkoski, grilling and enjoying nature. I often stay outside quite late, surrounded by the quiet of the natural world. That night was rather chilly, around 10 degrees Celsius. At some point, I noticed what appeared to be the start of the northern lights. A green mist appeared in the southern southwest sky. About 30 minutes later, a bright yellow spot began to form in a specific part of the mist. At that point, I felt compelled to get my camera from inside. I was particularly curious to see what was happening in that yellow spot, as there seemed to be some bright lights. I took several photos with my Advent camera, handheld with a 4-second exposure. It was a challenging task, but miraculously some of the photos turned out well. It seemed like there was one larger object and several smaller ones that remained relatively stationary. The entire event lasted about an hour and a half, with the lights visible for about 30 minutes. I didn't know what to think, and my feelings were quite strange. Although the camera couldn't capture all the colors, anyone can brighten the photos using Photoshop. I still can't say for certain what appears in the photos. Maybe it was a natural phenomenon, maybe something else, but I know that the truth will come out in time. The night of unseen visitors. Let me tell you about the strangest night of my life. It was late, and I was just about to go to bed when my dog started barking. Curious, I looked up at the sky and saw something I couldn't believe. There was a light moving silently in all directions, and at one point I could make out a Y-shaped pattern. It seemed like it was scanning the surroundings. This light show went on for about 3 hours, staying further away at first. Then, suddenly, it disappeared. I rushed to another window, and to my astonishment, I saw the craft at the edge of the field, just a few meters away. There were 2 lights visible, and one of them was flickering. The next day, I talked to someone about it on the phone, and we tried to piece together what happened. I even made a drawing and took some photos to capture what I saw. In my drawing, this spherical light burst, or UFO, had a Y-shaped pattern made up of small, bright lights. From my southeast-facing window, I watched this object move across the sky for about 3 hours until it finally disappeared, heading west. To give you an idea of its size, it was somewhere between a large star and the moon. I managed to take two pictures, but unfortunately, they only show a bright spot with no details because the object had already started moving away. From what I observed, the object seemed to be scanning or measuring its surroundings and was spinning in place. Sometimes it would beam downwards towards me. There were two other people sleeping in the apartment. I tried waking them up to show them, but neither believed me nor were interested in coming to see. About 4 hours after the first sighting, I looked through the northwest-facing window to see if there was anything more. That's when I saw two large, bright, round lights on the ground at the edge of the field, just a few meters away. These lights were about the size of a small gym ball and seemed to come from a single object, which I described as a clump, about 3 to 4 meters wide. There were no other discernible details. Out of fear, I didn't look at this object for more than a couple of seconds, but saw one of the lights move on top of the other. Later, when I dared to look again, I saw a small light in the distance. At night, looking out the window towards the backyard, you can't see the neighboring houses or their lights, just darkness because of the small field back there. I left the apartment the next day and didn't think to check for any traces on the ground. However, I asked my father to check the field the following week. When I spoke to him on the phone, he said he found about 10 holes or depressions a few centimeters deep and less than 20 centimeters in diameter. These impressions didn't form any regular pattern and were about 20 meters from the back window of the house. My father had no explanation for what could have caused them. It was the most surreal experience of my life, and I still can't explain what I saw that night. Thank you for joining us around the campfire for another episode of Nordic Nights. I hope these incredible stories have sparked your imagination and left you pondering the mysteries of the unknown. Until next time, keep your eyes on the skies, your mind open, and your spirit adventurous. Good night, everyone.